Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Yeah, just it's always these yeah, just
It's
trying
all
to
good. Technology, we love it and we hate it at the same time.
Oh my goodness. Well, yes, I am having a baby. So my wife is due this Saturday. Is her due date? I
Which
know.
also means like any second now. Like she could go
Yeah,
into labor like right now.
correct. So she's just like, "Oh," she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm recording an episode." It's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know when I'll be back, to
Oh,
like
well,
record."
please send her my sincerest thank yous for allowing us to record this episode and just send her my best. I know what it's like. And always those first few days before the baby gets there, it's always a little nerve wracking. So I know where she's coming from.
Yeah. Well, I really also like that you were like, "Oh, let's you're like, "Oh, let me put my kids to sleep first." And I'm like, "Yes, someone finally understands."
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
not like
exactly. It's a juggle. It's a constant juggle, especially when there's kiddos involved to fit things in at the right time. And we always want to give them our best.
yes.
And so it's hard to find, the hours to squeeze it in. So thank you for your flexibility in
Oh,
moving things around.
I appreciate it. Well, I want to thank you first and all and foremost for um, the honor of having you here on Visions to Ventures. It's just great to see your podcast and see, and find you and to see what you do. So I'm like, I need to share your story.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
um,
I'm excited for today's conversation. I really am.
and so what my for this podcast, what I like to do is kind of for you to introduce yourself and then um, how what you do, how you started, and
Okay.
then kind of the other part that I also like to use more of the inspirational, motivational type of uh, just so it shows the listeners out there that um how someone started, and even though if they didn't have like a plan or whatever it might be, but what led you to there, and then kind of different routes to how you got where you're at. Because not
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, here it's gonna be perfect. You just do this and you follow it and you're gonna be where you're at. So
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, buckle up, everybody. It's going to be a, a wild ride. No, honestly, our story is very windy and it's very unconventional. And I do hope that whoever listens to this today would leave feeling inspired and encouraged that if a story as crazy and as messy as ours can lead to where we are today, by no means have we arrived. We're just getting started. But if we've been able to see the fruit of just taking that leap of faith, I would hope that someone feels encouraged. So our story starts actually 5 years ago, and this week is actually really special to me because we're celebrating our company's 5th birthday. We turned 5
oh,
on Saturday. Yeah.
congrats, yay.
So every year for me, honestly, I celebrate my company birthday more than I celebrate my own birthday because it's just such a special time for us. It marks when our life, my husband and I, our life really took a turn in trajectory and led us to a whole new venture. But it started about 5 years ago when I left my full-time job in corporate advertising. So I was a salesperson here on the ground in my city in Albuquerque, and I was selling TV and radio advertising at Univision. And I loved my job. It taught me a lot of amazing skills, but I had just had a baby, and something in me was just stirred by the fact that I just couldn't be the mom that I wanted to be. And through the course of my job, because it was, media, we had to undergo a lot of rigorous digital training. And so through that, I started to see the potential behind social media. And at that point, my husband and I, we talked about it. And over a series of many months, we decided that I would leave and start my own social media management agency. And so when I was 4.5 months pregnant with my next baby, we decided we were going to, take the leap and just do it. When God said go, we said, okay. And so, I was 4.5 months pregnant when I put in my 2 weeks notice, and the rest is history. April 1st, 2018 is when our company officially launched. And so I'm the CEO now of this growing organization. It's called Mariposa Marketing. And I lead a team of, at this point, 8 people. So we've gone from a 1-woman operation to 8 people. And we are servicing businesses all over our city. We've expanded a little bit beyond Albuquerque as well. And man, it is just a wild adventure. I'm grateful that over time, this didn't happen right away, but our company grew so much that I was able to bring my husband home from his corporate job. And so now we co-operate the business together, husband and wife team. I'm the visionary, he's the brains. And every day it's just a wild, crazy ride. So we're always kind of balancing, our passion for the work that we do, but we're also parents. And so that's a big part of our job, is to make sure that we're raising our children the way we want. And then of course, making sure that our marriage is also well watered and nourished through all of this. It is a big balancing game, but all that to say, no day is like the next. And we really, really just love what we get to do. It really is a privilege.
Wow, that's I love
That's a lot. That's
I
a
don't know what
mouthful.
to No, well, it's first like came to mind is you did this while, 4 months pregnant. So I feel for some, even I'm for to say for myself, like if that was the case, I think the fear of me were like, oh, is this, right what I'm doing, or, kind of having second thoughts. But I feel that's a good way to show that doesn't matter what, I'm not even say situation, but what your current, you were at currently at that time,
Yeah.
that you still did and executed that vision that you had.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Because, I want to throw this in there to say that the decision for me to leave came with a lot of prayer, because for us, God is the driving force behind everything in our business. And so it's so God to pick the most inconvenient time for us to have to leave. Because at that point, right, 4.5 months pregnant, like I want security. I want to know like where the next check is coming from. I want to make sure that my house and my children are cared for and provided for. But looking back on that decision, I'm like, but then that wouldn't require any faith, So
Right.
I like it. I like it that God throws curveballs at me and decisions like that to say, okay, this is the time. This is the when I'm giving you the piece about this decision. And then it's up to me to say, okay, I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to follow through. But yeah, you're right. There's a whole part of it where it's like in me, like the person in me wants to stay where things are secure and where they're safe and where they're predictable. But then as I'm reflecting on that, I'm like, but that requires no faith, And so I kind of go back and forth on that, often having to remind myself, like, am I operating by the spirit or am I operating by the flesh? The flesh wants security, comfort. The flesh wants to know all the answers and have all the answers lined up. Whereas the spirit operates on faith. No answers, but trust that God's going to take care of it. So that decision, was totally just a decision of faith. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that also. I mean, I think what also drew me to, wanting to have, be part of this episode of this podcast was like when I met Dippo and then kind of, saw your story and the comments and everything. For me, it's like, wow, like you are very, God is, is some, it's, like how it should be with everyone, right? Having God at first in place and the rest follows, and having faith. So for me, seeing that and just hearing about that, it's just like you trusted, God and that faith, and kind of just took that leap, and you never look back. Cause I feel with God first, I kind of removes the fear of anything else, right? From what I would see. So I think that's great, with that story and how everything followed through with that.
Yeah. And in some ways, but here's the other thing too, because I don't want to sit here and pretend like in the hard times that I don't currently, and sometimes even, before, like, especially right after I left, fantasize about going back to the regular 9 to 5. When it's like, when everything feels so heavy and there's so many details and there's so much going on, sometimes, once again, operating by the spirit or by the flesh, I think, oh, how secure to like have a job where when it starts, when it ends, the money's going to be in the bank every 2 weeks, what to predict, and so I have had moments, and I mean, ask my husband, he'll tell you, of just wanting to go back and questioning my path, questioning my decision, and always resolving, nope, I'm going to stay. But I'd be lying to you if I acted like I haven't had thoughts like that of like going back to the comfortable life, because in a lot of ways it's very tempting. And I know that I never would, but it's just one of those, like, when I'm having like a pity party kind of day where it's like,
No.
you got to think, if I would just go back, I could just go back to a really high paying sales job and just do really well and have everything lined up. But then, what's the fun in that? So
Yeah.
I always end up in this circle that's back where I am, saying, I'm not leaving. Of course, I'm not going to turn back. I've at this point, I've burnt the bridge. I've burnt the boats. I see
Yeah.
you're burned the boats right there. I've burnt the boats. There's no way to get back. And this is what it is. And so it is a lot of like talking yourself through it. So for the entrepreneur who's listening, who thinks that like you make a decision and then you're just forever steady on that, like you probably will have ups and downs. You will have moments of wanting to retreat, and you have to really know and identify when you have those moments to talk yourself back into sense of things, of why you're doing what you're doing. What would it mean if you left, and how much would you regret it? And so I don't want to paint this picture that it was this seamless transition. There was a lot of emotionality that went into it. But, 5 years later, looking back, I think that's normal and that's natural for anyone who's on the verge of making a really big life-changing decision.
Okay. No, and that's kind of, it shows too that even starting your own company, there you're still going to have those times where you're like, I want that comfortable life, because it's not, even if you're like, for you, right, you're 5 years into already your company. And within those times you had like, oh, maybe I should just make it comfortable, because it's not comfortable. It's kind of like, it's challenging. And then also on top of that, you're adding, 8 additional, now with employees, 8 additional lives that depend on you, having your company being successful, that maybe for them, it's that faith that they took in you as well, for like saying, hey, I see where this is going, and I want to be part of it. And so now it's like, okay, you have them depending on you as well, kind of.
Absolutely.
So that's even more.
Yeah. And that's totally a weight that, it's, I don't want to call it a weight. It's a privilege and it's a responsibility. And it's one that I don't take lightly when somebody commits their time, effort, energy, and talents to my organization. And so you're right. There's this additional responsibility of having to make sure that I provide for them as well, because they have livelihoods too. They have goals, they have dreams, they have families. And
Yes.
so those are all things that, as an employer, that I'm not sure year one I would have anticipated, and I think that's sometimes the thing with entrepreneurship. It's like in the beginning that sometimes I feel like people have painted it in a certain way that could be misleading a little bit, that maybe it's focused more on like the glittery parts. And so a lot of our mission is that I've resolved that I'm going to share the honest truth behind entrepreneurship, the difficult truths, not in a way to deter people, but more so in a way to coach people into being actually ready, so that when they hit those moments of challenge, that they don't retreat, that they stick it out.
Correct. No, that's awesome. And I really kind of, you sharing everything, and like you said, you took us for a ride. So it wasn't, I'm like, okay, like, is she gonna, oh, she's adding more. I was okay.
Yeah.
It was great, but I love that. So how did your husband take, I mean, just because, you mentioned your husband, did he take that whole, like, hey, I'm, starting this, and do you want to be, part of it? Or was it like took time for him to jump on board?
Okay, I'm so glad you brought up this honest topic, because for a lot of entrepreneurs who are in committed relationships, this has to be considered. Okay. And it's not talked about often.
Mhm.
So the decision went something like, I remember, and I shared this on my podcast as well. I was having this, just when I'm driving, I get a lot of ideas, I guess you could say. And so it was one of those days that I was driving around to all of my clients. And I was just thinking about, okay, well, what if I started my own agency and I was selling social media accounts for $250 a month each? And I don't ask me why that amount, I put that. And also looking back, that amount is just like beyond silly because there's so much work that goes
Yeah.
into it. But just for the sake of the math, I think I had picked that amount, and I was just trying to do the multiplication in my mind. And so I told myself, okay, if I can sell 10 accounts, then that'll, $2,500 if I can sell 20 accounts. Also back then in 2017, 2018, social media wasn't as robust as it was now. Like you could
Mhm.
post 2 to 5 times a week, and that was considered social media management for a while there. Okay. These were the good old days. Okay. And so, I remember doing the math, and then I called my husband. I said, okay, hear me out. Usually if I start a conversation with hear me out, he knows. Like, oh no, okay, buckle up. Okay. And so I was in the parking lot at Costco. And I remember I called, and I had to get this off my chest. I had to tell me, okay, what if I do $250 and I sell 20 accounts, okay, plus your salary, okay, we can make this work. And he's like, where are you? And I was like, the parking lot at Costco. And he's like, do we need to talk about this now? I'm like, yes, we do. So I shared my idea, and that was the beginning of the planting of the seed of this idea into my family. Okay. But it was not immediate after that, because my husband is not the person that you hit with this like grand idea and you expect that he's going to just take the ball and run with you. He needs time to marinate. He is a question asker. He needs to be able to get all of the details so that it makes sense in his mind before he's able to give his full blessing on things, which I understand that about my husband. I respect him for it and I love him for it. So over months of talking to him about this idea, praying with him about this idea, he finally was on board. And it was actually him who was the one who said, it's time, when it was time for me to leave. And so this is how I knew that the time was right, because like I said, he's not the guy that you just like hit him with a crazy idea and he runs with it. So when I knew he was the one who said it's time, then like I knew for sure it was time to go. But some of the things that we dealt with, like it was me kind of like frustrated, like wanting him to see the vision, but he needed to take it in his own way. And so I think that's something for couples to consider. Like when your spouse or your significant other doesn't see exactly what you see, being patient in the process of getting them to understand your enthusiasm and your excitement. But also I had resolved, I am not going to make a decision apart from my husband, because the decision was a family decision. And if I didn't have his blessing, in my mind, this is what I thought: how can I advance in something apart from my husband and ask for God's blessing over it, knowing it would bring division to my home? And so that's where it was a decision for me to say, okay, until we are together on this, I can't do it, because how can I ask God to bless if I'm deliberately bringing division in my marriage? And so over time, God answered my prayer through giving my husband the green light for us to go forward. But don't get me wrong, there was a lot of conversations about it. And in the beginning, he was not working with us. So that was a difficult season, because I would come home with all kinds of like pent up, enthusiasm, energy, but also challenges. And he didn't really understand my world because he was still working his corporate job. Well, back in October 2020, he came to work for our company. Now we work together. So it's not that things have completely resolved, because now he's in my world every day. We just have different issues. And so every single day working alongside each other is a new opportunity to learn how each other works. We are so different. We are complete opposites. Like you wouldn't believe how opposite we are, but we complement each other. And so, for the couple or for the person listening who maybe you've thought of the idea of, bringing your spouse in on a business with you, there's a lot of work to do as far as learning each other's working style to try to find that harmony within each other. I can't even say at this point that he and I have arrived. And every week brings its own set of unique conversations we have to have. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because I get to do this adventure with, my best friend. But at the same time, there's no manual that tells
Yeah.
you, hey, how to honor and love your spouse as you run a business, or how to run a business with your spouse. So it is just kind of learning through the difficulties of it. And we have our days, we have our good days, and we have our really challenging days, but that's just the truth of it.
Yeah. And I bring that up because I know either personally or with, other guests that I had is either they not so much support from the spouse or, or significant other. So you're like, so then that kind of pushes them like not to pursue it as a strong or go with that. But knowing that even though your husband was on board, not right away, but currently, and they're still not 100% like it's, there's still some, like you said, some issues that happen or challenges, better than saying that than issues, but challenges that come about.
Yeah.
And so knowing that even it is having that great to have that support, but also knowing that it's still not going to be like rainbows and butterflies. You're still going to have something else coming up.
Yeah. Even the company called Mariposa, trust me, it is not always butterflies.
Oh, yeah.
It's not always, but you know what? It's worth it. It's so worth it. And for us, because we have so many kids and it gets so crazy, honestly, I don't see a model for us that could work that would allow us to be both parents and business owners if we didn't work together. Because as of right now, there's just so much going on. He and I need to lean on each other as far as the work goes. And so the blessings well outweigh the challenges, but I don't want to act like there's not challenges.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. So what inspired the name Mariposa for your business?
Oh, that's such a good question. So it's kind of a funny story. When the business I was still like in the planning phases of all of this. My son, he was probably like maybe 7-8 months old. And one day I was sitting at my desk and I was praying for a name. And I was like, Lord, just whatever you got for me, and I was like hoping to get inspiration. And my son started crying from the other room. He woke up from his nap. So I remember waking up. I remember him waking up, and I stood up and I was kind of frustrated because I was like in my zone, and I had resolved, I'm going to pick a name today. Like, this is going to happen. And so when I got up to go to his room, I made eye contact. I looked down at the wall plug, and there was an air freshener from my first Mother's Day that my mom got me from Bath and Body Works. Those little air fresheners.
Yeah, I've seen those. We have some of those here.
And it was a butterfly.
Oh.
And so it was a butterfly. So I go and I see the butterfly, and then I'm just kind of still thinking. I go and I walk to his room and I pick him up and I walk back and I look at the air freshener, and then I'm like, butterfly, Mariposa. And like, it just happened at that moment that I'm like, yes, that's the name. And there's no turning back. And it came from an air freshener. So I wish I had like a fancier, deeper, more meaningful story. But that's really how I got the name. And I do believe it was an answer to my prayer, just a funny one. But so far, what I really like is that God has affirmed for me the reason that is the name, because so much of business is mimicked in nature, or should I say, nature mimics business, or vice versa. I guess they resemble each other in the sense that as a business owner, we're always in process. We're always growing. We're always transforming. And so a lot of the time, even from the entrepreneurial journey, you see somebody start in the very beginning, right? This little caterpillar, this little tiny thing that's just trying to grow and has to go through this really difficult process. But on the other side, there's so much fruit. And so that's also what kind of bleeds into, why we're so honest, because we don't want to make the transformational journey seem like it's this, like, snap your fingers and you're there. We want to talk about the truth behind it, but to be able to show the other side of it, same way as the butterfly goes through that transformation, right? Exactly the miracle on the other side of it.
Yeah. I like that too, because you saying you were praying for a name, and then sometimes when you search for it, right? Like, you're like searching and you're like, oh my gosh. But then when you least expect it and it's right there, it works the way God works. It's like, here you go. It's
Totally.
like, here's your answer for you. And then
It's
also the whole meaning behind that for you, you might be, you said, oh, it's not really a big, meaningful, but it was meaningful because like I like how you put that into like someone starting their business, like the caterpillar and all that, and I love that because it's just like, yeah, it's developing that
development.
business. Yeah.
Always in development. Yeah, that's it. It's always in development. And I honestly feel like, even if this business at some point, if the Lord grants us, 45 more years and we turn 50, that will always be in process. We'll always be in development. And yeah, that's kind of where, we embrace the challenge because it's never really going to go away.
I love that. Uh, such as, oh my gosh, motivating and inspirational. I love that. Um,
Yeah.
what? So you said you had experience in advertising. Is that
Yeah.
so? Is some of that kind of is part of your business, or how do I? I'm trying to explain it. So like, when you went to social media marketing, did you have some experience? Is that something that you did in your previous job, or is it kind of more as you developed into kind of, okay, this is what I want my business to
Mhm.
be, like what you wanted to offer in your business?
Yeah. So, in my previous job, we were not selling social media management. But what was interesting is when I would go see my clients, I was selling TV and radio schedules. So, if you ever watch Univision,
Hmm.
and you see the commercials, and it's like, I don't know, you might see like an attorney, a car dealer. Like in my case, I didn't have any of the like larger accounts. Mine was more
Hmm.
like the carnicerias,
Yeah.
when you see promotional commercials like that, that's what I was selling. So it was TV and radio schedules. But through that, our company started to see all of this digital stuff on the horizon. So I would go visit my clients and they'd say, oh, okay, here's your check for the week, right? Because they paid in checks. So I had to go do my little lineup and go pick up all my checks to bring them back to the station. But through the conversations, they would ask, hey, I really want to be on Facebook. That's how they would say.
Yeah, El Face. Yeah, I hear that.
I want to be on El Face. Oh,
Uh-huh.
and so I'd say, okay, like, let me see if I can help you with that, and so, because I'm a solution bringer, like I always want to solve somebody's problem. So, like I had one, it was a llanteria, and he's like, Laurene, puedes ayudarme? I need help.
Hmm.
Quiero poner una página en el Face, and I'm like, okay, let me help you with that. So then I remember just kind of like being in his shop and taking pictures, and then we kind of had created this arrangement. And that's kind of where the idea had started, where I was just helping him. And then for a while, I was helping people for free while I was
Hmm.
working my full-time advertising job, because we didn't offer that service. And because wasn't necessarily ready to start accepting money for it, in a lot of ways, like I felt like I was just helping and learning.
Hmm.
But no, to answer your question, in terms of like formal training, I did not have any. I kind of just like went out and sought opportunities to learn. And then through that, I kind of built a portfolio and I made some contacts. And then from those contacts, then I was able to, grow the business. And so for the person who's listening, who is maybe feeling like discouraged, like, oh, I don't have any formal training in this, especially if it's social media management, at this point, we all have access to the most robust knowledge system in the world, the internet.
Yes.
And so for those of us who, maybe there's not formal training or, a degree in what it is that you're wanting to pursue, there is ample opportunity to learn online. And so my story is not one of like, hey, I had this formal, digital certificate. Not necessarily. I mean, I had some skills that I pulled from my other job. But as far as social media management, that was a new thing. And even to this day, it's still a relatively new thing, as far as what does it look like to own an agency, to manage clients, and to continue growing it, because it's kind of one of those businesses that not a lot of people know about. So there's not a lot
Hmm.
of competition. It's, anyway, where I am, maybe it's different in other places, but yeah, that's kind of what we're learning.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to bring that is because listen to other podcasts and other, conversations that I had or networking might be. It's sometimes I feel that there's when I do have conversations, like, well, I don't have the training for it, or I don't know what I want to do in my business. I have this idea, but I don't even think that I'm good. And for me, I'm always like, well, I never thought myself of doing a podcast, but here I am,
Yeah.
It's, and editing videos and all this audio. It's just like, But for me, it's like whatever led me, I think just having conversations and then wanting to share people's experience in life and their entrepreneurship. It's like, well, I have to learn if I really want to be spreading this knowledge and sharing people's life, so
Yeah,
I like that you brought that up. It's like, hey, and it's always a learning, and it's with social media, and there's so much into it, right? Like the whole algorithm, I tell to people, there's algorithms that change constantly, so you might
totally.
be doing something now, right? Something now, and then for you to stay ahead, you have to learn and continue learning.
Totally, absolutely. And yeah, I think as far as that part goes, for the person who doesn't have that formal training, one kind of like pretty practical quote that just always encourages me, and I tell this to my kids a lot. My I guess I think of like my actual children and then also like my employees at work. Um, but it's the idea that every expert was once a beginner.
Mm,
Every expert was once a beginner. And so like, if we think about it, it's like we see Olympians and the assumption they like overnight got really good at what they do. Like, no, there's so much practice and work and commitment that has to go into getting to that level. And so for the person who doesn't feel necessarily prepared, the only way to get prepared is to practice. And exactly like what you're doing here, right? It's like, if you wait till the day that you feel ready to start a podcast, I promise you, you will never start a podcast.
mm-hmm.
You'll never launch the business. You'll never take any giant leap, because I think as humans, it's just part of the human condition. We never necessarily like feel ready. There's always trepidation. There's always anxiety. There's always nervousness. And so if there is someone listening out there that's waiting for that moment to like feel that, I want to encourage them to think beyond that also, because emotions can be deceiving, and
Yeah.
you might feel really equipped one day and you might feel really behind the next day. And so if we ride on emotions, it's going to just be this like wave that's just going to be hard to keep up with. And so that is something as an entrepreneur, I think over time I've learned that is to try to separate myself from emotions as much as possible in order to make thoughtful decisions for myself. Because I think for a lot of us, when we ride on emotions, sometimes it's going to get the best of us. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're extra sensitive to that.
Yeah. It's funny because you got into, I was gonna ask you, like, what is the one advice you'd give to entrepreneurs starting out, but you just answered it without me even asking. So it's like you're one step ahead. So
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, no, that's it. I think it's just because I'm always like looking back and I'm thinking, what would I tell my younger
Yeah.
self? What would I tell my younger self about the journey? How would I encourage her
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago, knowing what she was about to go through, knowing the hardship and the difficulties that she would face? How would I approach that? And so that's like one of the things that I reflect on, that is just, being able to provide that encouragement about not necessarily letting emotions drive, because business in a lot of ways has to be, pragmatic and pointed and intentional and strategic. And sometimes emotions serve us well, and sometimes they hinder us. And so I just try to be cognizant of that. And for the person starting, maybe you hadn't considered that sometimes you have to put the nervousness to the wayside and just go for it.
Correct. And I like how you said that, right? You told yourself, oh, what would you tell yourself 5 years ago, that you currently know now? It's the same exact thing when I have conversations with people. It's like, if I'm already, I'm not saying I'm like like I know everything, but knowing where I currently at, if someone wants to start a podcast or whatever it might be, like,
Yeah.
let me help you. So that way you don't start in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
you start right where I'm currently at the moment. And I can show you how, what to do, what I currently know at the moment. And also if there's something that comes up, then I'll learn and then I'll be able to show you. So it's just for me, just personally for, yourself, what you would tell yourself back then, but also what you would tell people, and what you do in your job is, and, for your business
Yeah.
is you're helping people start off in a good start. Like, hey, let me grow your business. Let me be that person that's going to be, evolving your business and helping you out the way I can.
Yeah. And what I respect so much about that is there's such an abundance mindset behind that, right? For the people who have not necessarily arrived, right? Because we've talked about we're always in development,
Mm-hmm.
but for people who have reached milestones, who are willing to see somebody who wants to come up to that level, and someone who's willing to, put their hand down and pull somebody up and say, here's what I know. Let me share it with you. Because for a lot of people, it's maybe holding that information tightly so as not to share, so as not to
Mhm.
give somebody the opportunity. And I just like when there's people who operate with that abundance mindset of just being able to say, you know what, I have a wealth of knowledge and I'm going to share it with people. And I'm going to share it in a way that's not going to be trying to withhold it because I'm afraid someone's going to get past me, So I
Yes.
really appreciate that because it's hard to find. It's really hard to find.
No, and I agree. Conversations what I have with friends and family, it's always like, no, that's not, what it's about. It's sharing your ideas.
Hmm.
And then it comes to the other ones. What I have guessed is like not many people execute, right? So
Yeah.
I've learned so much from sharing ideas because they also give me feedback, like, hey, do this instead, and I'm like, oh, I never thought about it, right? Because I don't know everything, and people should come to that. You don't know everything, and there's someone that knows, might have that information that you might need, that's going to
Hmm.
develop that skill and grow you as better as a person. So
Totally. And you know what I think too? There's also this level of just security. I think for the person who is walking in faith in God's calling for them, it's like, I'm personally not afraid to share as much information in every direction as I have, because I know that where God has called me, even if somebody does advance beyond me, um, like his hand is over me, And so I
hmm
see it that way and I'm like, so I don't care. I don't care if I'm overly freely giving information. I don't care if I'm, um, I guess, counterculture in the sense that like I'm not in a lot of ways, like not charging for things or, and I
hmm
understand there's basic business principles to run a thriving, profitable business. But at the same time, there's just such a security I have that it's like, God will, if I give abundantly in the ways that I can have impact in the people around me, like God's going to take care of all the other stuff. And 5 years in, he's proven that to me. And so as
yeah.
many times as I've heard like, oh, Laurene, you should really charge for that, or you really shouldn't, you know,
hmm
all of these kind of like, I guess, operating in the spirit or in the flesh. Like in the flesh, yeah,
hmm
I should charge for that. Or, yeah, this is so valuable. I'm going to make sure that I get every penny's worth. Or, I'm not going to have coffee with that person because I'm not getting anything out of it. Like
Right.
all of that, like holding on to that, to me, it doesn't do anything. But in the ways that I have operated, where in a lot of ways it'd be like, oh, okay, oh, you should have charged more for that.
hmm
Or, like all those business principles that come into play, which I'm fully aware of, but oftentimes I strategically choose against it because I want to operate on a wavelength of abundance always, that I'm not worried about these little things and withholding it because I'm not afraid of, I don't know,
No,
someone
no,
advancing beyond me.
no, that's it's that speaks of kind of person that you are, and I love that because I feel that connection and knowing there's when I have a conversation with like a coworker or something like, oh well, why are you not, exactly the same thing, why are you not charging for that, why are you not like, um and I'm like, well, because like I say, go back, I don't want that person to, if I'm able to help that person in any way possible, that's what I'm gonna do,
Yeah.
and I'm not looking like, hey, because I helped you with this, later on you're gonna like help me out. No, it's like, as long as that person leaves whatever they're currently doing and pursuing that dream of them, that vision, and making it happen, that's all like matters to me, and building that community, because then I can all, have that person later on be like, hey, and I want you to share your story and see how you did it, and
Mhm.
kind of encourage other people who might start in the same spot, and just know that it's possible. And but also it, it's not for you, it might have taken you a couple of years before you decided to jump and take the leap of faith.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to encourage the person who might be on, dipping their toes in the water. Maybe they're not yet ready to jump in. That yeah, when there is a level of faith involved, there's also just a level of security, a level of peace that um, money can't buy.
Yeah. No. I love that. Oh my gosh. um what do you think is the most important thing to know when starting a small business?
Hmm, that's a good
Yeah.
question. Okay, I think the biggest thing, and this is kind of a little bit difficult, because I in some ways I kind of worked backwards in it, but now hindsight looking back, I think the most important thing to know when you're starting a small business is why you're doing it. what is it you hope to accomplish through this business? And so the reason I think that is because when you reach points of challenge and difficulty, if you don't know why you're doing it, then you will quit. And so it's important to know the purpose behind your actions, that you're pouring countless amounts of time, effort, and energy into every single day. It's important to know exactly why you're doing it, what you're doing it for. And, for some, maybe it is the financial aspect. For others, maybe it's the flexibility aspect. In my case, I can't particularly say that either of those have been, easy for me as far as the finances or the time. In fact, I make a lot less money and work a lot more hours than I did before. But for us, it is about purpose, and it is about the impact that we get to have in the people around us. And so for me, that's my anchor on the days where I feel like quitting and the days I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm exhausted and I'm tired. It's the purpose of the impact we want to have. That's what I come back to. And I think it's important for someone to know why, because you will have those days where you want to quit, and you got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And if you don't know why you're doing, it's a much shorter fence to jump over and quit than if you know why you're doing what you're doing. Then you have a lot more of a challenge to talk yourself out of it.
Well, love it. No comment on that. I'm just gonna leave it at that because I was
Mic drop.
I know. It's like, okay, bye. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Laurene. No, I really appreciate it. It's kind of good to, everything you're sharing, it's valuable information and valuable knowledge that I think everyone should hear. And hopefully someone's on their right to work or whatever it might be, like, oh, okay, I love this, what I heard from Laurene, and it's great. It's
Thanks.
gonna, I had to know that purpose and figure that purpose out. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like, is there like a key to success that like, oh, hey, I figured out, or do you feel like it's just, yeah, I guess, success can be different for everyone, but would you say there is a key to success that you figured out, or?
You know what I can say is, there's an action, or there's a way of thinking that I know over the years has really advanced my efforts. And the single thing that I think has impacted me the most is that I am very action oriented. And so, almost to a fault. And here's what that means. When I have an idea or I see opportunity, I go fast. And I don't give myself a lot of time to talk myself out of it. And so in some ways, I guess it could be called impulsive. And I'm working on being more discerning about that, right? Because not every opportunity is a golden opportunity. But in a lot of ways, that single, I guess, quality or like character trait about me has really helped me to advance my business very quickly. And it's just because if there's something that is undone and I have the power to do it, it will weigh on me. This small detail, I will obsess over it. And even, my husband knows, like, when we're sitting at dinner and I'm just like staring into space, I'm like trying to check in, but I keep thinking about it, this small little detail. And I think it's something in a lot of ways that God has given me this just desire to move with my hands when I have the opportunity to do it. And not to say that I'm not a thinker, when there's an idea that needs to be talked about or thought about, I honor that. But when I know that there's something that I could do and I'm not doing it, the weight is so great, it's unbearable for me. I have to do it.
Okay.
And so I think that would be I don't want to call it like, magic formula, but it is just something that over time. So it's like, there's an email that needs to be sent, I'm going to send it. There's a conversation that needs to be had, I'm going to have it. There's a client I need to reach out to, I'm going to do it. There's a post that needs to go up, it's going to go up.
Yeah.
And it's not thinking about all those things. It's the actual execution of it on the other side that over time, I think has just created this, I guess, momentum in my business that has
Yeah.
allowed us to grow. Also, of course, God blessing those efforts when I do it, but
Hmm.
it is just kind of this like thing in me that I consistently see in myself, and in some ways trying to get my hand on the pulse of it, right? Because when I'm with my family, I don't want to be thinking about work
Yeah.
all the time. I want to be a present mama. But within the job itself, yeah, it's like when I know something has to get done, I'm going to get it done.
Yeah. Okay. And you speaking of like things that so you currently so you have Mariposa, your business. You also have Mariposa, which is the podcast, correct? What was the name of
Yes, so we have Mariposa Marketing. That's our
Mariposa Market?
marketing company in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then we have Mariposa University, which is a digital university where we're teaching people to become social media managers just like me. And so that's it's virtual in the sense that we don't necessarily need to have our students here in
Hmm.
Albuquerque, but we have courses. We're developing another course right now, actually, for social media managers, where we're teaching people how to do what I did, to leave their jobs and go pursue
Yeah.
social media management. And then as part of that, the podcast is kind of like my passion project, where I get to sit down with people and learn about their business stories and their leaps of faith. But I guess it's kind of like that connector. It connects the two businesses together because it's where I get to have a lot of my clients on there as well, and they just get to share their stories.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Geez.
Yeah,
And on top of that, like you're a mom, so you have like
yeah,
that in
yeah. There's
itself.
that
It's
other
like,
little thing. Yeah,
yeah, you're
exactly.
like, here's my title, here's what I do, here's everything. So, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, geez, like I really just and also, for the listeners, the moms out there and single parents, and I say that because like not that you're single, but just knowing that, hey, like you're doing all this and then also you're running your business and you're also have that university where you're helping, where that can also help single parents or whoever decides to go
Hmm.
and take that and learn that type of marketing and do it on their own.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a lot. There's days where it's exhausting, but I think overall, um, I love I love what I get to do as far as teaching people and helping people. And I think that in this season of life, it's chaotic and it's adventurous, and I just expect that it's going to be like that for a while, and I'm okay with that.
Hmm.
And I found peace with that. And every day, God carries us through. And but it is a matter for me of just making sure that my family is covered and that I'm being the best parent that I can be, the best wife and the best mom.
Hmm.
And so if there is somebody out there, who is a parent, and you're kind of thinking of maybe opportunities that could help mobilize you as far as time, or creating circumstances financially that could help you with your family, I definitely think those are things to consider. What I think it's important for parents to be mindful about is, because I've thought about this before, it's like making decisions for our kids
Hmm.
to give them, the lives that we want to provide for them, and then in the process losing ourselves in it.
Mm.
So sometimes I have to think about that, and I have to, ask my husband, like, hey, have I spent enough time with them this week? Do you think I've been absent? Because I don't want to, in the name of growing the company that's creating legacy for my family, leave my family behind.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that it requires constant intentionality, and it requires constant cognizance of how have I been with my family. And I heard this quote the other day that just like wrecked me. And it said, um, if you're winning at work and you're losing at home, you're just losing.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's just so true. Like, even if it's in the name of, growing the company for your family, for legacy, for financial reason, whatever it is. But if in the end they're getting the scraps, it doesn't sit with me well.
Yeah.
So I can't say that there hasn't been days or seasons like that where it feels like that, but it's something that requires constant attention and monitoring.
And I'm glad you brought that up because I also you know was hearing that it's just like that balance of being a parent, also your business, where someone from the outside can just see, oh, this person is very successful, but not knowing all that balance that has to work, that you might be one day you might be like business in your family, not intentionally, but then
Mhm.
it kind of goes back and forth where you're like, okay, I have to find that right balance, and knowing that it takes work, and it's,
Yeah.
and you knowing that or figuring that out, be like, and talking to your husband like, hey, am I here or where, kind of like having to
Mhm.
be just someone to from the outside to let you know, hey, you're focusing too much on this, and come back over here, to bring you
Totally.
back.
Totally, because left to my own devices, I will work 18
Yeah.
hours. Like, if I didn't have, to check in as mom after my son gets home from school, or whatever it is, I could work myself until midnight, and I just, because I love it so much, like, it's, and for me, I have to just really watch that, because I love it so much, that I have to make sure that I am, even asking my husband, like, hold me accountable, please.
Hmm.
If you see that I'm not giving them my fullest attention, or, just one of the kids need one-on-one time, can I go on a date with my son? We'll go, grab some ice cream or whatever it is. It's just like always that constant, making sure that I'm
Yeah.
not dropping something in the balance. But, and it was something that I think that was said on the last podcast you had with Depot, that I've kind of just been like pondering on it for the last couple of weeks. And he had said, because I guess I've always kind of like had this visual in my mind of the way to balance life. And it's like, God at the top, and then it's family, and then it's, no, it's God, and then it's marriage, and then it's kids, and then it's work, and then it's everything else.
Hmm.
And not to say that that's not a bad thing, but it just creates this hierarchy where I think visually speaking, there's separation. But
Hmm.
I remember Depot said on the podcast with you, he said, no, God's in the middle, and everything else branches out from that. And
Hmm.
that for whatever reason, that visual has just not left my mind, because I'm thinking, right, if it's in the hierarchy, God's up here, works down here. Look
Hmm.
at this separation. Is like, am I really even allowing God to like come into that space in my life? But when God's at the center and everything branches out from that, he's in all of it. And
Hmm.
so that, to me, thank you for bringing up, that topic on your podcast, because it really impacted me. But it helped me to see that it's like, I don't want to have this hierarchy or this balance.
Hmm.
I want it to just be, even if it's a blob,
Yeah.
it all kind of like molds together, but just God at the center of all of it. God at the center of my home, God at the center of my business, God at the center of my marriage, God at the center of me as a mom. And it requires him to be at the center, not necessarily not at the top, but in the center.
Yeah.
Does that
No,
make sense?
yeah, it does.
It was just that visual that just changed my life, as far as thinking about that forever.
Yeah, Dippo, I mean, with the way he was explaining, I was like, oh my, like, I told him, man, it was just different. And I knew that episode was just going to be, different than the other ones.
Yeah.
But I really loved just because even when he mentions like, oh yeah, like, he even said for me, visions to ventures, and he's like, in the middle is faith. And for me, I'm like, I've been trying, that's something I'm like, what is like in the middle, and
Yeah.
then for
What's
him
the
just,
bridge?
yeah, what's the bridge connecting all
Hmm.
this, right? And when he's like, it's faith, and I'm like, yes, exactly. That's what I needed to hear. And so
Yeah.
that's for me that, and also what you just mentioned now is just like, yeah, it's in the center, and also having that faith. And I think it works in anything, right? For business and entrepreneurship and anything, it's just that faith, and from there, it's the rest. It's that purpose of
Yeah.
what you're doing. So.
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. But yeah, I think that having God at the center changes it all,
Mhm.
because there's not a separation of, God in any of it. He is in the middle of everything,
Yeah.
and everything is a result of the source of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Another mic drop here. Laurene with those mic drops. Hold on. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's too
Um, I don't. What is something that you want to leave the listeners, the viewers, that you just, I mean, you already did so many mic drops, so but what's something that you want to leave just listeners, entrepreneurs, anyone's just like kind of, just share whatever it is that you want to leave everyone off with.
Yeah. So my parting message to the entrepreneur who's considering, who's thinking about this, I want to encourage them that it's possible. It is possible. Anything that you resolve that you want to do is possible. And when you add that layer of faith in it, that adds all of the meaning and purpose behind what you're doing, and you add the power of God on top of that, it's beyond possible. In fact, God will bless you in ways that you never imagined. And on the days where you have no more strength or willpower to continue, his willpower will carry you in those seasons. And so if you have a dream on your heart and you honestly feel like it's ridiculous and it's insurmountable and there's no way you can do it, fantastic. That's the perfect place to start, where you are aware of the fact that you need God to help carry you to that dream, whatever that is. And if he calls you to it, and you are obedient in the steps that he sets before you, you will walk his path. I can't say that it's going to be perfect the whole way, and I can't say that it's going to be easy, but I can say that you will be in the will of God, in the hand of God, and there's no other place that, for me personally, I would rather be. So adding that faith aspect and just that obedience to God, I think changes everything, and it gives you such a security, and it makes it even more possible for somebody like me who has a pretty gritty, story as far as the startup. We had nothing. I had a used computer that I bought on Craigslist because my house had been robbed, and we were, young and poor and didn't have, at that point had one kiddo and another one on the way, and didn't have a plan as to how it was all going to work out. But if through the steps that we took, the obedience that we had, God has blessed that. Like, trust me when I say we are not the exception, and there's an abundance of opportunity for people. So I just want you to leave feeling encouraged by our story. And if there's any way that our story can encourage you, or anything that you could need, or advice, or whatever, as I mentioned on this podcast, I operate in abundance, in the sense that I would love to share whatever knowledge, answer, whatever that I have to help mobilize somebody's mission. It would be a delight and honor and a privilege for me to do so.
Awesome, Laurene. And what a better way. Thank you so much. I also, and this also is time for you to just kind of I don't know the lingo, but I guess, where you plug in kind of your business, everything, where people can, listeners can find you. So this is your time to just share, like, your social media and anything else that you want, where people can locate you.
Cool. So we are mostly present on Instagram. That's my favorite platform anyway. You can find our two channels at Mariposa Marketing Stuff. That's our marketing agency, or at Mariposa University. That is our digital university. On top of that, we do have a very robust and growing YouTube channel where we are educating people on how to become thriving, high-paying social media managers. You can find us on YouTube at Mariposa University. And then on top of that, we do have our own podcast called the Mariposa Podcast, available on all major podcast networks. And if you just search in the Mariposa Podcast, you will find us. Our third episode actually drops this Friday, March 31st. So you'll want to definitely tune into that. We interviewed one of our clients. He's the owner of the best mouth guard company in the world. And he has an amazing story to tell. So I encourage you guys to just see what we're about. Come hang out with us. And yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, Laurene. I'm also going to add that onto the Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that. So I just want to make sure. So I'll add those links on there. And then when, I share the episode is released, and also I'll add it, and make sure that everyone is able to check out and see you and your, what you're doing for everyone else. And thank you again. For for me, I'm traveling to New Mexico, because like I'm doing all these like virtual, but like I mentioned to the to Depot, and I mentioned to Alexander, knowing such a great people that are in New Mexico, I want to plan a trip to New Mexico and just hopefully see you you guys in person, and just, because I think that would be such a great thing to do. I just
Yeah,
have to wait till my daughter, sorry, my son is gets here, and then I'll figure everything out. But and
absolutely.
so, but
Yeah,
seriously, you've been great. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation and being such a part of like my vision that I'm trying to go for.
absolutely.
And this, vision to vision wouldn't be possible with the guests that I have, and building that friendship and that communication and all that. So, thank you again, Laurene. I appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and I'll thanks again. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, next time you are in Albuquerque, please come hang out on the podcast. We'd love to have you. And in the meantime, yep, go take care of that wife and your baby, and wishing you all the best with delivery. And I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All righty. Well, take
See,
care. God
okay.
bless you and everything.
God
Okay.
bless you too. Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Bye.